Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christy, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. You are in for another treat today, and I am so excited to introduce you to my new friend, Evan. But before I do, if you're not already following this podcast, I really need you to go ahead and click follow, and then I need you to share it with your friends because everybody needs a little more productive joy in their life, and they won't know about it if you don't tell them. So please make sure you do that. And just a quick shout out to my dad who does the intro music and his wife, Kathy. I think that it's important that you recognize that this is a family affair. So, are you ready to meet my new friend? So, Evan Marks he's a coach, he's a keynote speaker, he's a foodie, he's a girl dad of tweens, which in and of itself is a full-time job. He's a husband, he was a D1 athlete, which we might get to dig into. He's a girl dad, but he's also a dog dad to a girl named Gigi. So, that's a sweet little pup we need to learn about. And he's an investor, and he's my new friend. So, Evan, welcome to Productive Joy.
Well, Chrissy, thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to this conversation. I do have a lot of ladies in my life, as everybody just heard.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of it.
There's a lot of estrogen happening in your world, which is pretty exciting for sure.
Now I grew up with boys around me, so this is it's no longer new, but I can't relate to the other side any longer. I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Well, we can be infectious, us girls. We're pretty good at it. Well, Evan, I'm so glad that you're here. And people are finicky, so we want to make sure that they know they need to listen to this episode. So what would you say to them in 30 seconds or less that would make them want to keep listening?
We all have the ability to change. That is not void of feelings. You know, when we say, I'm happy, I'll do this, it doesn't work that way. But when we start to make small incremental steps, behavior changes, shifts in the way we believe, in the way our mindset works, anything is possible. It doesn't happen on a Wednesday. But if you stay long enough in the pocket and have great patience with yourself, you will be amazed at what you're capable of doing. Give yourself that opportunity. And that's what I want people to come away, that feelings are just data. But we can consciously choose how we want to behave, which in turn builds new experiences. And don't get me into the whole the neurological effect of that. But it's amazing. We all have it. Putting down something that you didn't want to eat or going for that walk after dinner, that has a material effect on your life, your performance. I'm a performance coach. And your end result, whatever that byproduct would be, is attainable. We all have this. And I'm very passionate about this stuff.
I can tell. And you know what? You can just drop the mic and be done if you'd like, but I'd like to go further.
Never.
So you just said something, well, you said lots of things that were important, but the thing that stuck with me is feelings are just data, right? And that is indeed true. And I think sometimes we live in our feelings and we think, oh, I'll never get past this, whatever. I'm feeling X, depressed, excited, whatever, and it's never going to change. But that's just information that moves us forward. So you're a performance coach. You work with lots of different types of people. Tell me how you use that fact that feelings are just data to move people into where they need to be. How do you do that?
You know, often we don't want to have those so-called negative emotions. Fear, anger, embarrassment, frustration, rejection, but they're real. We all have them. And what you said, Chrissy, was so important. Like, we don't have to ruminate in them, right? We don't have to live in them, right? Because ruminating is a behavior.
Yeah.
So if we say, hey, I'm angry right now, and so, I want to go take a walk, or I'm going to go do this, the intensity, the duration of that feeling goes down. And the more and more that we change our behaviors that serve us, the less the intensity, right? And the bigger the experience. So when we think about, I always say in my practice, you have to slow down in order to speed up. Slowing down is the act of intentionality, not taking your foot off the gas, giving yourself time, and I even tell my children this, and I tell my permission to feel. It's a feeling. It's all it is. Joy, anger. I would obviously rather feel joy. But believe it or not, joy and anger almost have the same amount of time because the brain brings it back to this homeostatic level. So the more we ruminate in these quote unquote negative feelings, It doesn't allow us to do what we want to do. And it's true. There's so much science behind it. And it's an emotion. But these negative emotions carry intensity. So if I can take listen, I'm an ex-athlete. I'm a Wall Street guy. I work with a lot of athletes, CEOs, Wall Street professionals. What's wrong with a little anger and rage? If I channel it in the right way, right? I have a lot of it, but I know how to use it.
Well,
I don't fight it.
everything in life, right, can be a tool or a weapon. If I hand you a
I
hammer,
love that. Yeah.
that's a
I love
tool. But I
Yeah.
could certainly use it as a weapon if I wanted to. And so what I'm hearing you say is that our feelings can be both tools and weapons. And it's okay to feel the anger. It's okay to feel the frustration. Be in the feel for a moment. Just don't dwell in it. You move forward. Otherwise, it becomes a weapon and you're stuck harming yourself or others with that anger. Because, anger can affect both you and the people around you. And we need to avoid
Absolutely.
that.
Well, now we're talking about consciousness.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of things, I don't know why I felt that way. And in my practice, we deal with that a little bit. Excuse me. I'm sorry, the phone's going off. But if we give ourselves mental space, right? Like I can't control, Christy, how you feel. I can't.
Nope.
However, and nor can you sometimes, but we sure as hell can control our behavior.
Yes.
So how do we do that? How do we go out of reacting to responding and being proactive? We talk about mental space. Like, it's all right to feel the way you feel. I feel certain things, people would be amazed. But this is how I feel. I'm a human being. I live this human experience. But I also know that it's a feeling. And if I give it space, breath, acknowledgement, verbalizing, I'm a little angry right now, and then choose a behavior, that's how we start to move ahead. Right? And then in time, I can't tell you when, that anger, you still feel it, but it doesn't have the same hold on you anymore. And in fact, I could take anger, tie it to a new behavior, and create a new experience in my brain that when I'm angry, I no longer do what I used to do. I'm like, oh, little anger, okay, what do I got to do? Oh, I know what I need to do. What a great position to be in.
Yeah.
Now, when you talked about weapons, good or bad, or how good is that? And by the way, you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that's what you help people do, right? Like
I do.
you act as a coach, and as someone's coach, you help them figure out the new neural pathways. That's what I heard is you work with them to say, okay, anger's not bad, but let's get a new pathway so that it has a different result. And you do that for lots of different people. The majority of the audience for this podcast are leaders who want to do things differently, right? Leaders who don't want to just be status quo. They want to figure out how to create productive joy. So I'm curious how you see those two things connecting, what you do and getting people to own their feelings and move past them. How does that create productive joy? And what would your definition of productive joy be?
So my business I marry the why and the how,
Mm.
right? So my practice of psychoanalytical theory meets the latest research in neuroscience, right? So when you say productive joy, when I hear that, to me, it's choice.
Okay.
Like to have the power of choice to choose how I want to behave. When we talk about leaders, right? Remember, when we weren't validated as kids, we look for validation, we act out. But if I start to know how I behave and I have power over that, productive joy sounds right in that area.
Yeah.
That's freedom to me. Like people always ask me my definition of success. Success to me is I do what I say. To me, that's important, right? Because that's a conscious act. And it puts me out of the surviving lane into the thriving lane. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Nope.
I always say precision over perfection, right? If we're perfect, maybe you're 6 feet under. I don't want to be perfect. Because if I'm perfect, I'm done.
Yeah.
I have no room to grow. So when we understand our emotions, understand our behavior, our vision starts to open up of the possibilities. And it's amazing. Like I said, it doesn't happen on a Wednesday. It's repetition.
Sure.
And these little acts that we do, whether it's exercise, waking up a little, going to bed a little earlier, to wake up a little bit earlier, That's not inconsequential. It's behavior shift
Yeah.
of the possibility of what else can we do? So whether it's athletes, CEOs, C-suite, or Wall Street, we're in the behavior game of we know that these negative emotions carry weight. And listen, euphoria, by the way, is a dangerous emotion sometimes,
Sure.
and how we act on it, right? Panic and euphoria. To have a better understanding of that and to know that we can change in the face of that is awesome. So it's almost like we let go of the rope. All right,
Yeah.
I'm allowed to feel that way. What am I gonna do? But I know that I have the power to change.
That's
I
awesome.
know that I have the power of choosing my behavior. And that I know also that it's affecting my brain. Like we hear about neuroplasticity and all these great words. They're true. There's research now.
Yep.
And watch what happens. When people ask me when I'm going to see results, I say, I have no idea. I said, but I'll tell you one thing, it's going to look different.
So
Is
you've
it?
been
No. Yeah.
right. You've been doing this for a minute, right? Like this isn't just something that you dreamt up yesterday and you decided to start
No.
talking about today. And you, I'm sure, had a path that led you here. So why don't you walk us through that a little bit? And then I'd love to hear a specific story about a time that somebody worked with you and this is the result they got. Because I think everybody listening is going, yeah, I need more of that. I get it. I understand it, but I don't know how to get there. So can you kind of walk us through that how that happened?
Well, I'll tell you how I became a coach. So I'm a New Yorker, and I have an identical twin brother. And we both went to University of Pennsylvania to play lacrosse. And Northeast is big in lacrosse, and what happened was my freshman year, I blew my knees out once, and then I blew them out again.
Oh, geez.
And so now my identity as a student athlete was shattered.
Yeah.
My brother wanted to become captain, all this stuff, and I didn't want people to know I was hurting. My grades suffered a little bit. The booze picked up a little bit. I was in massive pain. But that pain lasted for 15 years.
Mm,
So I hid that. I'm like, nobody's going to know. But you know what was showing up? Behavior.
got it.
Right? So I was trying to dismiss, get away from these feelings as opposed to acknowledging them. And then what happened was my brother went to Wall Street, and I grew up. We didn't know much money growing up. My father was a crackhead. He died homeless. So we didn't know what Wall Street was, even though University of Pennsylvania is an incubator.
Mm,
So my brother got a job at a leading hedge fund. And he's like, "Ev, you got to see these guys. They're competitive." And I got into it, but I never wanted to do it. I always wanted to be a coach and a teacher.
interesting.
Yeah. However, I was decent at it. And after 23 years, when I was 46, and I had coaches along the way, I moved my family out to the burbs. And I remember sitting in my car on a Monday. I'm talking to my assistant, and I thought I was having a heart attack.
Mm,
Everything seemed good. Business was good. Money was good. Everything was fine. Later, I found out I went to the ER. I went home first. My wife's like, "What's going on?" Looked like I had 27 martinis. I went, they found that it was a massive panic attack. I
oh,
was like, where? Everything looks good. I put myself under so much stress over those course of decades that the neurologist said to me, literally goes, and I brought my wife with me because she doesn't believe sometimes the things I say. She take health and put it aside. He's like, "Why don't you become a teacher and a coach because your brain is fried?" I go, "A teacher and a coach? That ship has sailed." And then out of nowhere, an ex-coach of mine said, "What do you got to come work with me?" I went back to school at 46 years old. But during that time, I met somebody along the way that I started to express my anger, my rage, my inadequacies, right? Because I was trying to validate myself through trading. And that's not what you do.
mm-mm.
That's what I was doing. And it was very painful. And I had to come to this realization, like, I got to work through this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I could see a car crash happen and I'm the guy in it.
Yeah.
And it took that moment of, "Hey, we got to change, pal." And it didn't happen overnight. But I think the first thing was like, there was an issue.
Yeah.
And I came to realization I had to accept, like, you know what the weakness is? The weakness is me keep doing what I'm doing. And it took courage to open up about this stuff and
Uh,
to talk it out loud and start to change my behaviors and belief systems and my mindset of what I was capable of doing. So in a way, I was a guinea pig for myself.
mhm.
And then I met beautiful people along the way. And then this heart attack, this massive panic attack, I told my wife, I said, "I'm done. I told my twin brother we were in Italy. I said, Steve, I'm done. He's like, what do you mean you're done? I said, I'm going back to school. He's like, how you going to do it? Well, I haven't figured this out. Right. 6 months later, I'm coaching Jimmy Johnson and his pit routines at Hendrick Motorsports.
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
yeah. But it was something
So
I've always wanted to do, but it took courage. I had to acknowledge what the hell was going on. I was 46. I had a 8 and a 6-year-old. My wife's like, well, what are you doing?
I'm sure she did. But she supported you through it. Oh, you just said so
Yeah.
many beautiful things that I want to make sure we don't miss. So first and foremost, you were doing great. You were
Things were good.
cruising,
Well,
doing
not
great.
really, but I thought so.
But your body said, hold on, sir, there's something happening in here. And that panic attack, I have many family members very dear to me who suffer with panic attacks, and they are real and they are scary and they are physical, right? Manifestations of what's going on in your mind. So I
Yeah.
get it. But you listened and you said, all right, what can I change? And you shot big. Like you were like, okay, I'm going to become a coach, but I'm going to coach like the big folks. Like you didn't dream small.
I
You
thought I was
dreamed
gonna be
big.
coaching small. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew something had to change
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
remember looking at my kids. I'm like, I may not be here.
And they matter, right? And you
They
wanted to be
matter.
there.
Yeah, my wife matters. I'm
Yeah.
like, really? And to be quite frank, my wife wasn't there. I don't know if I would have told her, and I'd probably still be trading. But luckily, she was there.
Yeah. And
Because I
she
was
saw
so
it.
far.
She
Yeah.
saw
Oh
it.
yeah. She's like, you got to make a decision, pal.
Well, I think a
It's
lot
an
of
easy
people
decision to make.
listening can relate to what you're saying about, okay, I was grinding and I was fine and it was fine. Everything's fine, right? But we all know that fine doesn't really mean fine. And so you had a moment where you had to choose to change directions or not. You could have kept going, which I think a lot of people do, but you didn't. And in shifting, now you get to help people. You get to help people figure out how not to end up like you did. And you have the experience that has made you the expert in this space. And now people can find you and can choose to do it differently. How cool is that? What feels different about your life today versus, however many years ago that was that moment happened? What would you say is the biggest shift that you've experienced?
I never used this word before, and only just recently. This immense, overwhelming feeling of gratitude.
Oh, say
Right?
more.
I never went. I didn't know what it meant. Gratitude. What does that mean? Right? I'm grateful. But
Sure.
to have the chance to do this, and listen. I have a beautiful family. My mother was a single mother. I understand what independence was, and she was strong. Great friendships, but I'm very grateful that I get to do this. And I'm even more grateful that I think where we are now, when we talk about, we know what material wealth is, right? The cars, this, the that, the houses. But there's such a holistic wealth movement going on now. Maybe COVID started, I think it was starting before that. Simone Biles, all these things, like mental health is real.
Oh, yes.
Just because you take care of your mental health doesn't mean you can't do well, right? If there's a merger between the two, that I'm allowed to feel the way I feel, I'm allowed to verbalize what's going on in my life. That doesn't affect the bottom line. I'm going to say it's going to 10x the bottom line.
Yeah.
So when I talk about clients like opening up and understanding that sometimes these perceived weaknesses are the greatest roads of growth you've ever seen. I'm a living example of it, and I know it's true. We have to play our strengths, but our perceived weaknesses are just narratives.
Yeah.
That real growth can come. So when I work with people, I feel like I can't believe I do this, right? And I'm, my kids think I geek out on science. I'm always reading and reading. I'm fascinated by that, and I'm grateful for that. I'm gonna have the opportunity to actually do this.
Yeah.
To be on stage, to work with phenomenal people, but it's so interesting. The people I work with aren't interested in doing this. They're committed to doing this.
Ooh.
And when you feel that, I'm committed to what I do. I love this, but it's a commitment to get better. It's not a freaking hobby, right?
Right.
It's not, and when you talk about leaders, right? There's a difference between leadership and management.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are two different worlds. But sometimes when we lead from the past. So if we understand that and how we communicate and how we listen and how we behave, it just doesn't affect the organization because we know great cultures breed exceptional performance, but it affects everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So
And to
so
open up and be honest and bring it from the darkness to the light is incredible. It's just healthy. And
it
it's
is
very
healthy.
healthy. Yeah.
So, mathematically speaking, I did look to see when you graduated from college, and you're a few years ahead of me, but not much. So maybe 5 years ahead of me. And so, in our generation, right, we would be in the same generation. This was not taught. It was not taught that it was acceptable to break. There was no such thing. Like, you just had to grind and figure it out and suck it up, Buttercup, and off you go. Right? Like, my father's phrase was, "There's no candy asses in the Finn family." It was the phrase that I grew up with. And I think he meant it to mean be tough, right? Be strong, figure it out. You're capable. And I appreciate that being instilled in me. And yet, it is not a sign of weakness, and yet a sign of strength to recognize that our mental health has to be okay, and that we have to push forward and do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. If you broke your leg, you would go to the doctor. But when our brains are broken, sometimes we think we're supposed to just handle it somehow. So I'm so grateful for men like you, women like me who are figuring it out, right? Who are
Yeah.
willing to say, but I think what's most impressive about you, Evan, is that you're not keeping it to yourself. You're letting other people know, hey, it is okay. And here are some things I've learned, and here are some things that I want you to know. What would be your biggest piece of advice that you would give somebody who's in this boat, right? So somewhere in their late 40s to mid 50s, or let's say 25 to, 80. I think we could all learn from this. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give people who haven't ever really thought about their mental health like this, but need to?
I think one of the greatest words ever is curiosity, right? Get curious. Like we hear about all these things, right? We know what one side looks like because you've been doing it. When people come to me, I'm not a motivational coach. I'm not a positive psychology guy. I'm an opportunity guy.
Mm,
I know what reality is, right? I know how to grab our footing, but to get curious about what does the other side look like? When you asked me earlier, what does choice feel like? Like, what happens if I start to have an open mind, say, you know what, maybe there's some truth to this. Let me experiment. Let me get curious, right? Because curiosity is just information seeking.
yes.
Let me
Yes.
see what this is about. It's, because my clientele ranges from 25 to 60, right? And everybody's different. Everybody's got different experiences. But they know walking in, this is not typical,
Hmm.
right? There's not many ways of merging the why and the how. But when they start to open up and they feel like, because we all have three basic needs: to feel supported, to feel heard, and to feel important. If we have those to start with, where we can speak our truth and bring it to light and not be afraid of it, not feel judged,
Hmm.
right? Because judgment's a big thing. Unfortunately, family does judge, right? Because it's just inherent. But as a coach and I am an observer, I'm here to listen to what you're not saying. You can tell me everything. And that old adage, the truth will set you free. It's true.
Yeah.
Once we get that, and it could be painful, but watch what happens. As you build this mental foundation, how we leverage it, right? Kindness with intensity wins. It does.
It does.
Kindness doesn't hurt the bottom line. It doesn't. It's just because you're conscious of what's coming out of your mouth because you know what's going on within.
Yeah.
I always say the internals lead the externals.
Mm,
For any leader, intensity doesn't get diluted by kindness. It
right.
doesn't have to.
Right.
There's a way we lead with compassion and empathy that people don't take advantage of us. I'm not saying that we have to be vulnerable every day of the week. I think you have to pick your spots, but it wins at the end of the day. Now, is that old school? Is that, Jack Welch? I go, well, I bet you some of these guys were like this.
Yeah. And is that
Right?
bad? No, right?
No. I have an identical twin who owns Mexican restaurants. He has a public company. This is how he handles, right? And he's learned, right? Great leaders always are evolving,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? because we know great cultures have to be mentally healthy. There has to be a psychological safe feel that goes on, and it doesn't hurt the bottom line.
No,
It
it does.
does. I've been doing this too long, right? Is there a way to communicate that? Of course, right? Is there giving people responsibilities that they have to do, accountability? Of course, right? All these things are important, but how we communicate,
Yep.
because sometimes we communicate from past experiences when we're reacting.
Sure.
We give ourselves that space
Mhm.
and then respond. What do they say? Sometimes just put in the draft email, get back to it in a day.
Yeah.
Right? Same
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Give it a minute. Give it a
Right?
minute for
A
sure.
minute. What's a minute? What's 20 seconds?
Yeah.
But what's happening is that you're building new pathways in your brain, right? We're not on autopilot.
Yeah.
We're not reacting. Because I know for myself and my experience, when I react, when I do that,
Yeah.
I should have just given myself a little more time.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows what that feels like. And
And
to
I
know
think
that we don't have to be like that is terrific.
I think the part that is most powerful is we are going to step in it sometimes. We are going to react instead of giving it a minute. But how we handle the aftermath is what matters. So, my kids are 23 and twins, actually, a boy and a
Oh,
girl. And there have been many moments as a mother that I have stepped in it and said something, reacted, handled things inappropriately. But the one thing that I promised them and me a long time ago is that I would always come back and say, you know what? I didn't handle that very well. I'm sorry. This is what was going on in my head. And I think that same honesty needs to happen in the workplace when we send, we fire off the email without putting it in drafts first, or we take a minute and, recognize, oh gosh, in that meeting, I really did not show up well. I was angry. I was, bringing something from home or earlier or whatever. And that to me is what you're saying is own it, right? It's okay to own it. It's okay to say, hey, I didn't handle that very well. What's not okay is just to continue to react and assume people will just follow you because they have to, because they don't.
right. And that's the whole thesis. Shit happens. I don't even know what that means. When shit happens. I know we're not perfect, but we can get better.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I have a 12 and 14-year-old. There's no way these girls should trigger me. I'm 52 years old, but you know what they do?
Yeah.
Now, if I'm 80%, 75% of the time pretty good, I'm happy.
Yep.
Right? I can incrementally get better. Right? But I'm a human being.
Yep.
Now, is that an excuse? No, but I think about it. I'm like, hey, Ev, how do I get better?
Yes.
Slow it down, buddy.
Yes.
Slow down.
Yeah. And they're going to be
Slow it.
better because
Oh,
you are
yeah.
going to choose to do that, right? Like we are modeling for them what it's supposed to look like because
Absolutely.
you've never been 52 before and they've never been 14 and 12 before. As a matter of fact, one just turned 14 today.
Yeah.
So
It's so true, by the way.
it's
Yeah.
recognizing that, hey, I've never done this. I don't know how to parent 14-year-olds, but I do know that I want to get it right. So let's get it right together, right?
Yeah, and I also know, and I think for everybody, if I slow down, right, and I'm very conscious of what comes out of my mouth and give myself space, I know it's going to be more beneficial.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. So I need to get better at that.
Yeah. Well, and it's to get psychological for a second before we get into our rapid fire, because I do legitimately think I could talk to you for days and we could be productive
Me
with that.
too.
But the idea is system 1 and systems 2 thinking, right? So our brain naturally kicks into systems 1 thinking, which is our experiences and who we are and our implicit bias. But that is most often in a leadership position, the wrong approach to take. You have to hold on and get to systems 2 thinking, which is you're taking your new experiences and putting those into place and using those as your reaction instead of gut reaction, knee jerk over here. So we're going to get into our systems 2 thinking. And here's the part that I want people to do. I want people to be able to find you, Evan. How would people find you if they've listened to this and gone, oh my gosh, I need to spend some more time with this man?
So I'm on LinkedIn at Evan Marks. I am emarks72 on Instagram, and I have a website, m1performancegroup.com, that's got a whole bunch of great podcasts and a great video about M1 and about my philosophy and how I go about it. And I also have a discovery tab. So if you want, you can reach out to me and schedule a call with me if you'd like.
It's
Yeah.
actually quite easy. I was just looking at it recently, and you have made it very clear for people. Once they find the website, they should be able to get in touch with you.
Yeah, my team did a great job. I'm useless at this stuff, but I'm
You know
learning.
what? Know your
I'm
lane.
learning, and I
Know
know to
your
hire the
lane.
right people. Yeah.
All right. Well, Evan, I have a couple rapid fire questions. This is the most important part because this is where I get to learn a little bit more about you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, what is your definition of fun?
My definition of fun is an incredible Italian meal at lunchtime with my family, having a nice glass of wine, some great food. That's what
Well,
fun to me is. And a lot
at
of laughter.
lunchtime. Do you eat it at lunchtime so you can sleep at night because it's a big
Exactly. I'm a morning guy. Exactly.
Oh, I love it. My husband and I went to Italy for the first time
Oh.
almost exactly a year ago, and the food. Well, there were so many things, but the
I
food.
had my honeymoon in Ravello,
Oh,
which is on the Amalfi Coast. I've been to Italy a couple times. It's heaven.
it's amazing. We're
Food to me
headed
is
back.
heaven. Yeah.
Okay. How do you know you're showing up as your authentic self?
When I know I'm slowing down,
Mm.
right, and I can feel it. Remember, somatically, you can feel your heart rate, your breath, and you feel calm. I know I'm bringing my best self.
Oh, I love it.
And now when I'm not feeling that way, I know I have to take a step back, breathe to get to where I need to be, right? I have to be able to down regulate. But when I'm feeling that well and my system feels slow and I feel calm, I'm in a good spot.
Yeah. Well, that kind of answers my next question, which is how do you channel your best self on your worst days?
Well, it's interesting. We were saying earlier, as you go through this process, you have to give yourself a certain amount of credit when you do something well. Not a cowboy cheerleading party, but a little bit of credit, because what it does is it starts to build pathways in your brain. And the other positive effect is that when I'm struggling, I'm able to give myself space. Okay, what have I done before? And I can channel that again, whether it's through visualization and manifestation, right? I get to redo that because I've experienced it. So I'm able to tap back into that, right? But remember, like everything else, I have to remind myself to do that. I have to be able to give myself that mental space. Like, wait a second, things that don't feel good right now. What do I need to be doing right now for myself to keep moving, right? But first is acknowledgement, right? But then I get to tap into what I've done.
Yeah.
And that's when we talk about building new experiences. It's so important.
I love it. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right. Last question. And this is going to be a tough one because, sir, you were full of wisdom today. But if people's brains, back to the neurology of all of this, can really only grasp one major thing from the last 30 minutes. So if they can only remember one major part of what you had to say today, what do you really want people to remember?
Patience in action.
Say more.
Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. However, take action too, right? Because sometimes when people say be patient and kind to yourself, it sounds like we can get away with stuff. Like it's almost an excuse in a way. But patience with action, right? Whether it's taking a walk or slowing down, it really starts to build this internal momentum, right? There's got to be action with it. I'm not saying you have to go climb Everest, but as you start to move in the right direction, motivation is a fleeting thing. Internal momentum is sustainable, scalable, and you can leverage the crap out of it.
I love it.
That's important. But keep moving. Like when people talk about goals, set small ones at first. A week, a day. Watch what happens. One of the greatest things clients can say to me is, how do we get here? I said, I know how we got here. Because if you think about it, when you think about it of a megaphone, 2 and 2 compounded is 4 sounds like nothing. 4 and 4, 8, 8, 8, 16, whatever. But as it starts to go, it goes to this threshold. All this work we've done, all this internal momentum, all this intentionality about building a mental foundation, also you look back, you're like, now don't assume that this takes a time assumption is, can I curse once?
Sure.
Is bullshit. Bullshit. Repetition is real. Don't put limits on yourself of this takes this long. It's not true.
No, it's not. And I want you to see. So for those of you that are watching, I took a lot of notes today of great things that you had to say. And Evan, I am so grateful that you chose to drop all of these nuggets of wisdom here on Productive Joy. I know you could have been doing about 900 other things, but you chose to stop and spend 30 minutes with us. And I'm forever grateful. So thank you for being here and being a guest on Productive Joy.
Well, Christy, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad you're safe, where I know that a lot of people got affected where you're living.
Yes.
It was really a pleasure to meet you, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. And for all of my Productive Joy listeners, thank you for being here. I told you I'm bringing all the best people that I know so that you can get that little shot of B12 and find something that you can use right away. Because the reality is that if this doesn't change your practice, it's not worth your time. So make sure you are grabbing on to one little nugget of wisdom, although there were many today, and figuring out a way to turn fun into action.